In the subterranean depths, where the light of the sun dare not tread, lay the chamber of Leon, a realm where the fantastical met the scientific in an intricate dance of ancient and future technologies. It was here, in this cavernous domain, lit by the eerie glow of bioluminescent crystals and the flicker of arcane machinery, that Leon, a being of reptilian origin, contemplated his audacious plan. The chamber, a testament to a civilization unseen and unknown to the world above, hummed with the energy of 1,000 secrets. Steampunk gears interlocked with advanced alien technology, creating a symphony of mechanical and organic harmony. In the midst of this technological marvel, stood Leon. His scales, iridescent under the artificial lights, reflected a spectrum of colors as he underwent a transformation both wondrous and unnerving. Leon's form shimmered as he activated the ancient device at the heart of the chamber. A spectacle of light and sound enveloped him, his reptilian features contorting, shifting, reshaping into the guise of a human. The transformation was not merely physical but symbolic of the crossing of worlds, a bridge between the known and the unknown. "My brethren," Leon spoke, his voice echoing through the chamber, "the time has come for us to extend our reach. The surface world, with all its chaos and ignorance, beckons. We shall walk among them, unseen, unknown, yet in plain sight." Around him, the walls were lined with artifacts and texts of ages past, each telling a story of their kind's long and hidden history. Leon's eyes, now more human than reptile, glanced over these relics of his heritage. His mission was clear: to infiltrate human society, to weave the threads of his influence through the fabric of their civilization. "But why, Leon?" questioned a voice from the shadows, belonging to one of his kin. "Why risk our secrecy, our safety, for a world that has shunned us for eons?" Leon turned, his new human visage a mask of determination. "Because," he replied, "to lurk in the shadows is no longer enough. We must understand them, to guide them, to control them. Our destiny is not to be mere observers but shapers of history." The air in the chamber grew heavy with the weight of his words. The machinery hummed louder, as if in agreement with his resolve. Leon's transformation completed, and he stepped forward, a being of two worlds, ready to embark on a journey that would change the course of both his kind and the humans above. With each step, the echoes of his ambition rang through the chamber, a prelude to the tale of deception and power that was to unfold. Leon, the shapeshifter, the manipulator, had emerged, and the world above would never be the same again. Upon the crowded streets of a sprawling metropolis, where the past and the future collided in an architectural dance of Victorian grace and modern audacity, Leon made his first foray into the world of humans. The city, pulsating with the rhythm of 1,000 lives, was a canvas upon which he planned to paint his grand deception. The sky, a tapestry of grey and silver, loomed above, casting a shadow that seemed to mirror the duality of Leon's existence. He walked among the humans, his guise flawless, yet beneath the surface, his reptilian essence lurked, hidden yet ever present. Leon's eyes, sharp and observant, darted across the faces of those he passed. To an ordinary observer, he was but another face in the crowd. But to the more discerning eye, there was something unsettling about him, a certain grace in his movements, a fleeting glimmer in his gaze, as if hinting at a truth far stranger than fiction. His first interactions with the humans were cautious, measured. He observed their customs, their speech, their mannerisms. With every word spoken, every gesture made, he adapted, molding his personality to fit the complex tapestry of human society. At a bustling cafe, he struck up a conversation with a young artist, her eyes alight with the passion for her craft. "The world is a canvas, waiting for us to leave our mark," she said, her words resonating with Leon's own ambitions. "Indeed," Leon replied, his voice a smooth, calculated cadence. "But some marks are more profound than others, some artists more transformative." The artist looked at him, a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. "You speak like a man who has seen much, yet there's something about you. Something different." Leon smiled, a masterful display of charm. "We are all different, aren't we? It's what makes life so fascinating." As he walked away, leaving the artist in a state of mild bewilderment, Leon felt a surge of exhilaration. He was weaving his web, thread by thread, each interaction a step closer to his ultimate goal. He wandered through the city, his senses attuned to every sight, every sound. The cacophony of the urban jungle was a symphony to his ears, each note a piece of information to be stored, analyzed, and used. His next encounter was with a group of businessmen, their suits sharp, their conversation laced with power and greed. Leon listened, his mind dissecting their words, understanding the intricate game of influence and manipulation that drove the human world. "You seem like a man of vision," one of the businessmen remarked, eyeing Leon with a mix of intrigue and suspicion. Leon's response was a smile, enigmatic and disarming. "Vision," he mused, "is the art of seeing what is invisible to others. And trust me, I see a great deal." As night fell upon the city, Leon stood atop a towering building, looking out over the vast expanse of lights and shadows. This was his domain now, a playground of possibilities, a stage upon which he would enact his grand plan. But beneath the excitement, a shadow lurked in the depths of his being. For in his quest to become a part of this world, to manipulate it to his will, there was a risk, the risk of losing himself, of becoming something neither human nor reptile, a creature caught between two worlds, belonging to neither. Yet, this fear was but a whisper in the back of his mind, drowned out by the siren call of power and control. Leon, the shapeshifter, the manipulator, had taken his first steps into the human world, and there was no turning back. The game had begun, and he was determined to play it to the very end. In the heart of the city, where skyscrapers reached ambitiously towards the heavens, a different kind of ascension was taking place within the walls of a corporate empire. The boardroom, perched high above the bustling streets, was a sanctum of power and wealth, its opulence a testament to the lofty ambitions of those who congregated there. Leon, now a figure of considerable influence in this human-made jungle, stood at the head of the polished mahogany table. The panoramic windows behind him framed the cityscape, a chessboard upon which he played his strategic game. His audience, a collection of executives and influential decision-makers, watched him with a mix of admiration and envy. They hung on his every word, unaware that the man who captivated them was not one of their own, but a creature from a world beyond their wildest imaginings. "As we chart our course forward," Leon began, his voice a melody of confidence and persuasion, "we must not just follow the trends of the market, but anticipate them, shape them. We are not mere players in this game, we are the game makers." The executives nodded, their minds unwittingly ensnared by his words. Leon's human guise was impeccable, his demeanor that of a visionary leader, yet beneath the surface, his reptilian nature orchestrated each move with cold, calculating precision. His proposals were bold, innovative, disguising his true intentions under the guise of corporate strategy. Under his guidance, the company ventured into new, uncharted territories, its success a mirror of his growing influence. In the boardroom, Leon's control was subtle yet undeniable. A gesture here, a carefully chosen word there, he manipulated the flow of the conversation, steering it towards his desired outcome. His eyes, keen and discerning, missed nothing, reading each executive like an open book. One of the executives, a shrewd woman with a reputation for her analytical mind, voiced a challenge. "Your plans are ambitious, Leon, but aren't we risking too much, venturing into these unknowns?" Leon turned his gaze towards her, his eyes momentarily flashing a dangerous glint before returning to their human guise. "Risk," he replied smoothly, "is the lifeblood of innovation. Without it, we stagnate. And I assure you, my calculations are not based on mere conjecture, but on a vision of the future, one that promises unparalleled growth and dominance in the market." His words, spoken with the conviction of a prophet, quelled any doubts that lingered in the room. The executives, swayed by his charisma and apparent foresight, gave their unanimous support. As the meeting concluded, and the executives filed out, Leon stood by the window, gazing out over the city. His reflection on the glass was that of a human, but in the depths of his eyes, a reptilian sharpness lingered. He had come far from the depths of his subterranean world, rising through the ranks of human society with a deftness that belied his alien origin. But this was only the beginning. His ambition was not limited to corporate conquest, it was a mere stepping stone to a much grander scheme. Leon turned from the window, his thoughts already moving to his next move in this intricate game of power and manipulation. The city below, with all its lights and shadows, was a playground for his ambitions, and he was only just beginning to reveal the full extent of his machinations. Under the vast canopy of a cloud-strewn sky, in a scene reminiscent of the great public gatherings of old, Leon, the enigmatic figure whose origins lay in the shadows of the underground, made his foray into the turbulent waters of politics. The political rally, a maelstrom of human emotions and aspirations, was a fertile ground for his ambitions. The air was thick with the electricity of anticipation, the crowd a tapestry of diverse faces, each reflecting a myriad of hopes and dreams, skepticism and curiosity. Flags and banners fluttered like the wings of colorful birds, each a symbol of allegiance to the myriad causes that pulsed through the city's heart. Leon, now a master of human guise, stood upon the stage, his presence commanding, his aura magnetic. He had traded the confined grandeur of boardroom battles for the vast arena of public opinion, where words were weapons, and charisma could sway the masses. "My fellow citizens," he began, his voice resonating with a fervor that belied his reptilian coldness, "we stand at the crossroads of history. The path we choose today will shape our tomorrow. It is not just a choice of policies, but a choice of who we are and who we aspire to be." The crowd listened, entranced. Leon's words were not just mere rhetoric, they were a siren song, weaving a narrative of change and hope, of a brighter future forged by the hands of those who dared to dream. As he spoke, his gestures were grand, yet calculated, a conductor orchestrating the symphony of human emotions. But beneath the surface of this charismatic facade, there was a more sinister melody playing, a tune of manipulation and hidden agendas. An elderly man in the crowd, his face etched with the lines of time and experience, turned to his neighbor, a spark of suspicion in his eyes. "There's something about that man," he murmured, "something that doesn't quite fit. Like a wolf in sheep's clothing." But his words were lost in the roar of applause as Leon concluded his speech, the crowd erupting in a fervent display of support. The echoes of their cheers filled the air, a testament to Leon's growing influence. After the rally, Leon retreated to the seclusion of his campaign office, the walls adorned with maps and plans, the tools of his grand strategy. He sat, deep in thought, his mind a labyrinth of plots and schemes. His entry into the political arena was not a mere whim, it was a calculated move, a step closer to the ultimate seat of power. Each rally, each speech, was a carefully laid stone on the path to his ascent. As the days passed, Leon's influence grew. He traveled from city to city, his message spreading like wildfire. People spoke of him in hushed tones, a figure of intrigue and inspiration, a man who could change the course of their nation. Yet, in the quiet hours of the night, when the world lay asleep, Leon gazed out of his window at the sleeping city, his thoughts turning to the world he had left behind. The subterranean realms, with their ancient secrets and silent watchers, seemed a world away. He had come far, perhaps too far, his human guise a mask that was slowly becoming his reality. But there was no turning back. The path he had chosen was fraught with danger and deception, a tightrope walk between the man he pretended to be and the creature he truly was. Leon, the politician, the manipulator, the shapeshifter, had set his sights on the pinnacle of power, and he would stop at nothing to reach it. In the midst of the city's relentless hum, a web of suspicion began to unfurl, casting shadows over Leon's luminous ascent. His meteoric rise, once a source of inspiration and wonder, now beckoned questions that fluttered like moths around a flame. The city, a vast organism of stone and steel, became a stage for a silent play of doubt and inquiry. In the heart of this urban labyrinth, a newsroom buzzed with the fervor of discovery. Journalists, their minds sharp as razors, pored over documents and photographs, each piece a fragment of the puzzle that was Leon. The walls were adorned with timelines and connections, a tapestry of information that wove a story of ambition and secrecy. "Look at this," exclaimed one journalist, her finger tracing a line of inquiry. Every step of his career, perfectly timed, too perfect. It's as if he's always been 2 steps ahead. Her colleague, eyes narrowed in concentration, added, "And there's more." His associates, his financial backers, they are all shrouded in mystery, as if part of a larger, unseen network. Their words hung in the air, heavy with implication. The pieces of the puzzle were aligning, forming a picture that was unsettling in its clarity. Meanwhile, in the shadowed arteries of the city, in a dimly lit alley, whispers traded hands like illicit goods. Here, the forgotten and the unseen gathered, their conversations a murmur of dissent and suspicion. "I've heard things," murmured a cloaked figure, his voice a hushed conspiratorial tone. Rumors of his true nature, of a hidden agenda far beyond the political theatrics. His companion, a silhouette against the fog, replied, "Rumors are dangerous things. They hold power, the power to unveil truths best left hidden." As the shadowy figures dispersed, their words lingered, a seed of doubt planted in the fertile soil of the unknown. Unaware of the growing maelstrom of suspicion, Leon continued his machinations in the opulence of his office. Surrounded by luxury and power, he wove his plans with the precision of a master chess player. His influence, once a subtle undercurrent, now flowed like a mighty river, shaping the very course of the city's destiny. But with power came paranoia. The slightest whisper, the briefest glance, began to hold a weight that tugged at the edges of his composure. Leon found himself gazing longer into the mirror, searching for cracks in his human guise, wondering if others saw what he so fervently concealed. As days turned to nights, and nights to days, Leon's mind became a battleground of ambition and fear. The whispers of suspicion found their way through the cracks of his facade, echoing in the chambers of his thoughts. In the solitude of his office, as the city slept, Leon pondered the fragility of his position. A single misstep, a momentary lapse, could unravel the tapestry he had so meticulously woven. Yet, even as doubt clawed at his mind, Leon's resolve hardened. He was too far along the path to turn back now. The game of power and deception was one he had chosen to play, and he would see it through to its end, whatever that might be. In the shadows of the city, a storm was brewing, a tempest of truth and revelation that threatened to wash away the foundations of Leon's empire. And in the eye of this storm stood Leon, a figure of power and paranoia, caught in the intricate dance of a destiny of his own making. In the grand theatre of international politics, where nations danced a delicate ballet of diplomacy and power, Leon emerged as a maestro of manipulation, his influence reaching beyond the borders of his own city to the global stage. The setting was a political summit, a gathering of the world's leaders, held in a hall that was a testament to human grandeur and ambition. Here, under the watchful eyes of history, amidst the flags of nations that fluttered like the wings of a great, multicolored bird, Leon moved with the grace of a predator disguised as a diplomat. His human guise was flawless, his charm disarming, yet beneath the surface, the reptilian mind calculated each move with cold precision. The air was thick with the scent of power and the subtle undercurrents of espionage. Conversations, laden with the fate of nations, buzzed like bees around a hive. Leon, at the center of this intricate web, engaged world leaders in heated debates, his words a blend of honey and venom. "My esteemed colleagues," Leon addressed the assembly, his voice a melody of persuasion, "we stand at a juncture where the actions we take will echo through the annals of time. Let us not be bound by the shackles of convention, but soar on the wings of innovation and bold leadership." His speech, punctuated by the nods and murmurs of agreement from the gathered dignitaries, masked the true nature of his agenda. As he spoke of cooperation and progress, his mind weaved a tapestry of control, each thread a nation's destiny entwined with his own. In the shadows of the hall, away from the glare of the spotlights, subtle exchanges took place. Shadowy figures, emissaries of Leon's will, traded information with the discreet efficiency of seasoned spies. Listening devices, hidden within the opulence of the decor, captured every word, every nuance of the global game being played. Leon's aides, a cadre of loyal followers, communicated covertly, their eyes and ears extended beyond the walls of the summit. They were the architects of his grand design, the unseen hands that moved the pieces on the global chessboard. As the summit progressed, Leon's influence seeped into the very fabric of international relations. His proposals, revolutionary in their scope, promised a new world order, one where old rivalries would give way to new alliances, where the balance of power would shift to align with his vision. In hushed tones, world leaders spoke among themselves, a mix of admiration and wariness in their voices. "He is a man of extraordinary vision," said one. "But his ambitions, they are boundless," cautioned another. "We must tread carefully, for we dance on the edge of a sword." Yet, despite the undercurrents of suspicion, Leon's charm and the promise of a united future swayed the assembly. Resolutions were passed, pacts were formed, all under the watchful gaze of the man who was not a man. As the summit drew to a close, and the leaders departed, each to their corner of the world, Leon stood alone in the now empty hall, a solitary figure against the backdrop of a world at the precipice of change. His eyes, those windows to a soul not human, gazed into the distance, seeing a future only he could envision. But in the solitude of his triumph, a shadow of doubt lingered. For in his quest for power, Leon had ventured into uncharted waters, a sea of intrigue and deception that threatened to consume him. The web he had woven was vast, its strands stretching across the globe, but it was also fragile, vulnerable to the slightest tremor of truth. And so, Leon, the puppet master, the architect of a new world order, stood at the crossroads of destiny and danger, his future, and that of the world, hanging in the balance of his next move. In the veiled underbelly of the city, where the light of truth seldom reached, Leon's dominion extended into the shadows, a realm where secrecy was currency and information was power. Beneath the facade of his public persona, a web of cloak and dagger operations unfolded, its threads woven by Leon's own hands. In the heart of this clandestine world, a dimly lit underground chamber served as the nucleus of his covert dealings. Here, amidst the echoes of hushed voices and the scent of damp stone, Leon negotiated with shadowy figures, the unseen players in the great game of power. His human guise, usually a mask of charm and confidence, was now a visage of cold, calculated determination. "You understand the stakes," Leon's voice cut through the darkness, his words sharp as blades. "Failure is not an option. The pieces are in motion, and we must control the board, at all costs." The figures nodded, their faces hidden in the shadows, their identities as enigmatic as their allegiances. They were the agents of Leon's will, dispatched to the far corners of the city and beyond, where they plied their trade in secret and silence. Elsewhere, in the secluded backroom of a bustling establishment, Leon met with his closest allies, his inner circle of confidants. The room, a stark contrast to the opulence of his public life, was Spartan, its walls lined with maps and screens, each a window into the intricate network of his empire. "We are close," Leon spoke, his eyes scanning the room, "but our enemies are closer. They lurk in the shadows, waiting for a sign of weakness. We must be vigilant, unyielding." His allies, a collection of individuals bound by loyalty and the promise of power, listened intently. They were his eyes and ears, his hands and feet, extensions of his will in the world above. In a high-tech surveillance room, hidden away in a nondescript building, Leon oversaw a network of espionage and information control. Screens flickered with the lives of countless individuals, each a pawn in Leon's grand design. Monitor the communications, he instructed, his gaze fixed on the myriad of images. We must anticipate their moves, counter their plans before they even take shape. Information is our greatest weapon, and we must wield it with precision. The surveillance room was the heart of Leon's intelligence apparatus, a hub from which he orchestrated his schemes and neutralized threats to his empire. From here, he watched the world, a puppet master pulling the strings of a global marionette. But in the shadows of his power, doubt began to creep in, a whispering specter that haunted the edges of his thoughts. With each move, each decision, the stakes grew higher, the web more complex and fragile. The lines between predator and prey blurred, as Leon found himself entangled in his own machinations. As he moved through the hidden corridors of his empire, Leon felt the weight of his choices, the burden of a crown forged in secrecy and deception. He had risen far from the depths of his subterranean beginnings, but at what cost? His human guise, once a tool, was now a prison, confining him in a world of shadows and lies. And so, Leon, the master of cloak and dagger, the architect of a new world order, walked a tightrope over an abyss of his own making, each step a dance with danger, each breath a moment stolen from the jaws of peril. At the zenith of his power, Leon, the clandestine ruler who had emerged from the shadows of myth, stood in the heart of his stronghold. This grand chamber, a fusion of opulence and state-of-the-art technology, was the nerve center of his global empire. Here, amidst the symbols of his dominion, he orchestrated the strings of a world that danced unwittingly to his tune. The room, bathed in the soft glow of screens displaying various global locations, was a testament to his near-omnipotent control. Flags and emblems adorned the walls, each a symbol of his influence that stretched across continents. The air was thick with the aura of power, the hum of technology a constant reminder of the reach of his empire. Leon, in his human guise, stood tall and imposing at the center, a figure of commanding presence. His eyes, sharp and discerning, scanned the screens, each a window into a world that he manipulated with the finesse of a seasoned puppeteer. His expression was one of arrogance, a man who had ascended to the heights of power, his ambition seemingly boundless. Around him, aides and advisors moved with a mix of reverence and fear, scurrying to execute his commands. Their deference was a testament to his authority, their hurried steps a dance of obedience to the rhythm of his will. "My empire," Leon mused aloud, his voice resonating with confidence, "spans the globe, a network of influence and control that the world has never seen. I am the arbiter of destinies, the shaper of futures." One of his advisors, a woman with a keen mind and a careful gaze, approached cautiously. "Indeed, you have achieved what no other has," she said, her voice betraying a hint of unease. "But there are ripples of dissent, whispers of rebellion. We must tread carefully, for power, as vast as it may be, can be a precarious thing." Leon turned his gaze upon her, his eyes narrowing. "Dissent? Rebellion? They are but the noise of the powerless, the inconsequential chatter of those who cannot fathom the grandeur of my vision. Let them whisper, for their words are as empty as the air they breathe." But even as he dismissed the warning, the screens flickered with images of unrest in various parts of the world. Protests in one country, political upheaval in another, each a crack in the facade of his carefully constructed empire. In the corner of the room, A flag bore a small, almost imperceptible crack, a symbol of the vulnerability that lay beneath the veneer of invincibility. An aide, his expression tense, exchanged a worried glance with a colleague, their silent conversation a ripple in the calm waters of Leon's dominion. Leon, oblivious to these subtle signs, continued to bask in the glory of his power. He walked among the screens, his shadow long and dark, a physical manifestation of the reach of his influence. But as he gazed out at the world he had shaped, a shadow of doubt crept into his mind, a whispering voice that spoke of the impermanence of all things. For in his relentless pursuit of power, Leon had sown the seeds of his own downfall, a truth that lingered on the edges of his consciousness, waiting for the moment to reveal itself. And so, Leon, the apex predator, the ruler of a global empire, stood on the precipice of his greatest triumph and his most profound peril, a figure of immense power and hidden vulnerability, caught in the ebb and flow of a destiny that he could no longer control. The edifice of Leon's power, once unassailable in its grandeur, began to show cracks, each fissure a harbinger of an impending collapse. The man who had once stood as a colossus over the world, orchestrating its rhythms and movements, now found himself grappling with the growing tremors of dissent and disarray. In the public eye, Leon's once unbreakable composure began to fracture under the relentless scrutiny of a world that had started to question his authority. At a press conference, under the glaring lights and probing eyes of the media, his veneer of control showed signs of wear. Questions, sharp and accusatory, flew at him like arrows, each one seeking the chink in his armor. Mr. Leon, can you address the allegations of manipulation and covert operations undermining democratic institutions? A journalist asked, her voice a mix of skepticism and determination. Leon's response, usually a well of eloquence and persuasion, came out strained, his words stumbling over the growing uncertainty within. These allegations are nothing but baseless accusations, designed to tarnish the transformative work we are undertaking, he replied, but his tone lacked its usual conviction. The crowd, once swayed by his charisma, now murmured with doubt. Whispers spread like wildfire, and the air was thick with the tension of changing tides. In the privacy of his office, a stark contrast to the public spectacle, Leon's world unraveled further. The room, once a command center of power and strategy, now resembled the chaotic mind of its occupant. Papers lay scattered, screens flickered with scenes of protests and negative news coverage, each a testament to the crumbling empire he had built. Leon paced the room, his movements erratic, the cool, calculated demeanor replaced by a growing paranoia. His gaze flickered to the screens, each image a stab to his faltering dominion. They are turning against me, he muttered to himself, his voice a mix of disbelief and anger. I, who have shaped the very world they inhabit, am now the target of their petty fears and short-sightedness. In his seclusion, Leon plotted and schemed, his mind a whirlwind of plans to regain control, to silence the dissenters, to smother the flames of rebellion. But with each passing moment, the task seemed more Sisyphean, the weight of his empire more burdensome. The whispers of rebellion that had once been mere background noise now roared in his ears, a cacophony of defiance that threatened to drown out his rule. The allies and confidants who had once moved at his command now hesitated, their loyalty frayed by the growing unrest. And as Leon gazed out of his window, the city below no longer seemed like the chessboard he had masterfully controlled. It had transformed into a labyrinth, a maze of challenges and threats that sprouted faster than he could quell them. In this twilight of his reign, Leon, the puppet master, the shaper of destinies, found himself ensnared in the very web he had woven. His grip on power, once ironclad, now slipped like sand through his fingers, each grain a piece of the empire he had built with such cunning and ambition. And so, the man who had once stood as a titan, feared and revered, now stood at the precipice of his downfall, his empire a house of cards trembling at the whisper of truth and the winds of change. In the secluded sanctum of his private domain, a room that once epitomized grandeur and control, Leon's world unraveled into chaos, mirroring the tumultuous descent of his mind into the abyss of madness. The walls, once adorned with symbols of his vast empire, now stood witness to his tragic downfall, their elegance tarnished by the shadows of despair. The room, dimly lit and disordered, was a reflection of Leon's fractured psyche. Papers lay strewn across the floor, their contents spilling like the ramblings of a disturbed mind. Broken objects, remnants of his outbursts, littered the space, each a testament to his growing instability. Leon himself, once the picture of composure and calculated charisma, now roamed his domain like a spectre of his former self. His appearance was disheveled, his once meticulous attire now unkempt and neglected. His eyes, which had once held the sharpness of a predator, were now wide with manic confusion and despair. He paced the room, muttering to himself, his voice a cacophony of paranoia and delusion. "They are all against me," he whispered, his words a mix of fear and anger. "My empire, my world, they seek to tear it down. But I will not let them. I will not." His gestures were wild, his movements erratic, as if he were engaged in an argument with unseen adversaries. The screens that adorned the walls flickered with chaotic news feeds, each report a dagger to his unraveling control. "My vision, my grand design, they cannot comprehend it," Leon ranted, his voice rising to a fevered pitch. "I am the architect of the future, but they are blinded by their ignorance and petty fears." In his isolation, Leon's grasp on reality slipped further away, the lines between truth and delusion blurring into obscurity. The room, once a command center from which he controlled a global empire, had become a prison of his own making, a mausoleum to his shattered dreams. The haunting consequences of his relentless pursuit of power loomed over him, a specter that whispered of his failures and fueled his paranoia. Each moment was a battle with the ghosts of his past, with the phantoms of his own creation. As he gazed out of the window, the city that had once been the jewel of his empire now seemed distant, a mirage on the horizon of a desolate landscape. The world moved on outside, indifferent to the plight of the man who had once sought to shape it to his will. And in this tragic tableau, Leon, the puppet master who had become a puppet to his own delusions, stood alone, a figure consumed by the very power he had so desperately sought. His empire, once a testament to his genius, now lay in ruins, a legacy not of greatness, but of a man's descent into the depths of madness. In the fevered recesses of Leon's mind, reality warped into a nightmarish vision, a cataclysmic world born of his deepest fears and regrets. The once mighty ruler, now a prisoner of his own delusions, beheld a landscape of ruin and despair, an apocalyptic tableau that mirrored the chaos within his soul. The city, once a vibrant testament to human achievement, lay in shambles, its skyscrapers crumbling like the pillars of a fallen civilization. Fires blazed uncontrolled, devouring the remnants of what once was, their flames a dance of destruction under a sky torn asunder by ominous clouds and streaks of lightning. In the midst of this devastation stood Leon, his figure dominating the scene, a solitary witness to the end of the world he believed he had wrought. His expression was one of horror and realization, the visage of a man confronted with the ultimate consequence of his hubris. Around him, the air was thick with the ashes of fallen dreams, the streets littered with the remnants of a life that had once been. The sound of crumbling buildings and the roar of the flames filled the air, a symphony of finality that echoed the collapse of his empire. Leon staggered through the desolate landscape, his steps aimless, his mind a whirlwind of despair and confusion. "What have I done?" he cried out, his voice a hoarse whisper lost in the cacophony of destruction. "This was not my vision, not my dream." But there was no one to hear his lamentations, no one to witness the tragic spectacle of a man undone by his own ambition. The world he had sought to control, to shape in his image, had turned against him, a cruel reflection of the chaos he had sown. As he moved through the ruins, memories of his rise to power, of his unquenchable thirst for dominance, flashed before his eyes. Each memory was a shard of glass, cutting into the fabric of his sanity, revealing the folly of his ways. The imagined apocalypse was not just a vision of destruction, it was the culmination of a journey that had begun in the depths of ambition and ended in the abyss of madness. It was the final chapter in the story of a man who had reached for the stars, only to fall into the depths of his own tortured psyche. And in this imagined end of all things, Leon, the architect of his own downfall, stood alone, a figure of despair and disillusionment, his empire of dreams reduced to a wasteland of ash and regret. The world he had envisioned, a world under his command, had become a haunting spectre of what could have been, a testament to the peril of unchecked power and the fragility of the human mind. As the veil of Leon's hallucination lifted, the stark, unyielding reality of his chamber came into focus, a far cry from the apocalyptic vision that had consumed his mind. The grandeur of the room, once a symbol of his power and ambition, now lay in disarray, mirroring the collapse of the empire he had built. Leon, seated in the midst of the chaos he had wrought, was a portrait of defeat and realization. His posture was slumped, the weight of his failures bending him like a tree in a storm. The once calculating and ambitious ruler now looked frail and broken, his expression etched with the lines of a hard-learned truth. The screens that adorned the walls, which had once displayed the reach of his influence, now showed news of his downfall. Headlines spoke of his manipulations and machinations, the world awakening to the truth of the man who had sought to pull its strings from the shadows. Scattered around him were papers and remnants of his shattered dreams, each a piece of the grandiose plans that had crumbled to dust. The symbols of his lost power lay neglected, their luster dimmed by the harsh light of day. In this moment of revelation, Leon's mind, once a fortress of strategy and control, was laid bare, exposed in its vulnerability. The empire he had envisioned, a world under his sway, was revealed to be nothing more than a house of cards, fragile and fleeting. He spoke to the emptiness of the room, his voice a hollow echo of its former strength. "I sought to shape the world, to bend it to my will. But in my pursuit, I lost myself, became a prisoner of my own ambition." The room, once buzzing with the energy of his plans and commands, was now silent, a mausoleum to his failed aspirations. The screens, the papers, the symbols of power, they all stood as monuments to a man who had reached too far, grasping for a destiny that was never meant to be. As Leon gazed around, the reality of his situation settled upon him like a shroud. His empire, built on manipulation and control, had crumbled, leaving him alone in the ruins of his own making. The world outside moved on, indifferent to the rise and fall of a man who had once fancied himself its master. And in his chamber, Leon sat, a fallen king in a kingdom of shadows, a cautionary tale of the peril that awaits those who seek power without regard for the consequences. In this final scene, the tragedy of Leon's ambition was laid bare, a stark reminder of the fragility of human aspirations and the inexorable truth that, in the end, we are but players on the stage of a world that turns regardless of our desires and dreams.